Hello everyone, my name is Joshua Romulo and today I will be presenting on the subject of code mixing and mode mixing by ASL English Bilinguals based on the writings of Gerald P. Berandt. In this presentation, I will be presenting topics relating to American Sign Language bilingualism, topics which include a brief introduction to American Sign Language, ASL English Bilinguals, contact signing, and lastly a topic known as code mixing and mode mixing. And so to begin today's presentation, the first topic I'd like to discuss is American Sign Language itself, or ASL for short. For over 30 years, researchers in the field of linguistics have encountered properties of American Sign Language such that information that was once unknown to us became available. And one of those findings include an analysis of the differences between the American Sign Language and the English language. Berandt, who summarizes the findings of two researchers named Eliza Newport and Ted Supala, states that, quote, ASL verbs exhibit verb agreement with objects and often subjects. English exhibits verb agreement only with subjects. ASL has a rich system of classifier morphemes. English does not. ASL deviates frequently from SVO word order. English rarely does. ASL permits null arguments, and English does not. End quote. Berandt also provides a set of information relating to the speakers of sign language, such as the fact that, number one, most of the children who cannot hear came from parents who can both hear, and number two, unfortunately, learning English is a lifelong struggle for those who cannot hear as well as others do, perhaps due to the fact that being able to listen to English amplifies the learning process of understanding the language. Now that we've covered the introduction to American Sign Language, our next topic of interest is with regard to American Sign Language, English bilinguals. A question that Berandt asks in his writing is, who is an ASL English bilingual? And so to answer his question, Berandt presents a classification of speakers whereby different status of hearing and language acquisition is assigned to letters. And as you can see in the current slide, the letter A represents deafness, B represents being able to hear, C is having ASL required as a first language, D is having acquired ASL as a second language from an early period in life, E is having acquired ASL from a later period in life, F is having acquired English as a first language, G is having acquired English labeled as L1.5 acquisition, which simply represents a child who cannot hear, who has a knowledge that simulates a understanding of English as if it were a second language, and lastly H, having required English as a second language. And so such a categorization allows us to differentiate between varying classifications of ASL English bilingual speakers by combining one letter from each column into a trio of letters. For instance, one can classify an ASL English bilingual as ACF, ACG, ACH, or ADF, and etc. Having spoken about the aforementioned system of categorization, our next discussion will be on a subject in ASL English bilingualism known as contact signing. According to Berandt, contact signing is a type of signing whereby its influences stems not only from the American Sign Language but also from the English language. However, two linguistic researchers in 1992 by the names of Ceil Lucas and Clayton Valli differ in the criteria as to what it means for a signing to be categorized as contact signing. They argued that contact signing is a third system in that such is neither a variety of American Sign Language nor a variety of English language. Berandt then implies in his writing that the one flaw in Lucas and Valli's assertions is that, quote, at the same time that the authors argued that contact signing is a third system, they recognize that there is a great variation in contact signing and that the linguistic backgrounds of the individuals using it will determine which features of contact signing show up, end quote. Berandt then concludes that Lucas and Valli's criteria of the definition of a third system is therefore not a convincing argument. After covering topics such as the introduction to American Sign Language, ASL English bilinguals, and contact signing, our last topic of this presentation is a subject known as code mixing and mode mixing. According to two researchers named Robert Hofmeister and Donald Moores from a writing in 1987, Berandt explains that code switching is defined to be as, quote, the variation between more ASL-like signing and more English-like signing, emphasizing that such code switching is a part of the everyday communication of deaf persons, end quote. And lastly, Berandt states that, quote, with regard to options for code mixing across modalities, ASL English code mixing involves the sequential alteration of elements from the two languages, as well as the simultaneous articulation of elements. We can call code mixing that operates bimodally mode mixing to distinguish it from sequential code mixing, end quote. To conclude, 3 questions that we can ask based on the contents of this presentation is, number 1, in what ways can we improve ASL English bilingualism as a whole? Number 2, when might we see other sign language variations? For instance, one variation that came across my mind is JSL, which stands for Japanese Sign Language, whose grammatical syntax would differ from ASL since the sentence structure of Japanese is different from English. And number 3, should ASL courses be offered in more secondary schools so that those who cannot hear can communicate more with others who can? As a closing, and once again, my name is Joshua Romulo, and thank you for tuning in to watch this presentation on code mixing and mode mixing by ASL English Bilinguals. I hope that everyone may have a great rest of your day, and I'll see everyone on Wednesday. Thank you.